I was thinking of sort of the next step for meditation, because again, meditation has, up until 1979, has always really been a practice that is part of a much larger package and dynamic and system, whether it's Buddhist or Christian or whatever it is. It's an element of a much larger set of teachings and practices. So when we're doing, there was one of the questions, and as I've mentioned before a couple times, that a few years ago there was the mindfulness and compassion had sort of saturated, kind of reached a lot of people. And a lot of people going, okay, what's next? Do I take another 8-week course? Do I do this? Do I do that? So that's one of the reasons I do this, is because it's when we learn, have the basics down, we have a good foundation in mindfulness and loving kindness exercises and compassion. The next step is to learn how to apply that to specific circumstances and situations that we may find ourselves in or that have ourselves. We've gone over a lot of things over the in the modules, but I was thinking an important element of mindfulness in developing a mindfulness practice is to have a clear understanding of what it is we're experiencing when we're doing the meditation. And there's sort of 3 levels. There's a level of the obvious thoughts, like, oh gosh, I got to go shopping today. And then there's the more subtle thoughts and feelings about a person or a situation, pleasant or painful. And the third is more elusive. They're the sort of underlying, undulating, undifferentiated emotions. They can be really bothersome. And when doing meditation over a long period of time, we can first become skilled at taking our general moods, if we're feeling upset about something or disappointed or just tired or whatever it is, and working with the meditation with that, we can gain stability and a sense of equanimity, so that we don't have to fall prey to being in a particular mood or have a particular attitude. We can just go, oh well, I've got to do something else. Second is when, let's say we have a difficulty with someone, there's a disagreement or conflict of some kind, that reaches more into our habitual patterns. And so those habitual patterns then are present in our immediate circumstances that are unpleasant. And so the mindfulness meditation there helps us to be able to bring that into a state of equanimity, and from that can come a sense of wisdom or understanding. That's the pause between stimulus and response that Viktor Frankl talks about. And the third is, we can't help but self-evaluate. I'm getting really good at this. This is great, And then something will come along, we get really upset and go, oh my God, I haven't made any progress at all. And all of that, whether we think we're doing terrific or we think we're not doing so good, all of that needs to be abandoned. Because ultimately we don't really know. Because the way we work is that we may make progress in a particular area to a certain degree, and then we have something more challenging come up, and we respond in the old way. It's not that we haven't made any progress. We've made progress to a certain, let's say a challenge is on a level of 1, 2, or 3. Okay, and we got those challenges 1, 2, or 3 pretty well worked out with our meditation and such. And then along comes a 6. And we respond in the old way, and we begin to berate ourselves. That's counterproductive. What it means is, okay, now we've got that calculus problem worked out, here's another one. So we got to work that one out. Well, how am I going to do that? Well, it's the same practice. We just keep practicing. And so it's important that we not give ourselves report cards along the way. Because what that does is it engages our deductive reasoning mind, which is exactly what we are attempting to train and subdue. So whatever happens in life or in the meditation, we just keep practicing. And I really think practice is sort of a misnomer. I guess so. You can call when we're sitting and meditating and doing the practices and self-compassion practices, that's practicing. And then if that's to follow that term, then we're out in the world, we're performing, we're on stage. And so the more we give ourselves reviews or editorials or that sort of thing, we're going to just inhibit the overall process. Being self-aware is important, and we can be aware of how we're responding in particularly difficult situations, and that's a good indication, how we're doing in general. But to dwell on that or assign a value to that, is not productive. That's the first level of mindfulness, is when oftentimes it's ascribed to when something pleasant or good or positive happens, and then after a while that turns sour, and we're confused. Why does this happen? Why does that happen? I'm really hurting. So then we simply go back to practice and work through that with a sense of equanimity. And then the second level is where we run into a little bit more deeply set patterns. Those happen with family usually. Not everybody has a perfect family. So sometimes there's some family members that just really send us through the roof in seconds. Or we have certain patterns of social interaction or self-evaluation or things like that we inherited. Or our family thinks of us in a particular way that is not really who we are, like they've never really seen us accurately, and those sorts of things. And those are a little deeper to work on. And the third is, this feeling deep down that something just ain't right and we don't know what it is. And I think of that as an existential recognition of this sort of raw deal that we have in being human. It's just the human life is not easy. There's no way to escape or modify that in any way. Now we can change how we experience it through these practices, but we can't change the fact we wake up every morning and we're still human and we're on planet Earth. And for a lot of people that's a problem. And that's one of the things that drives, in my opinion, drives addictions of all forms. Because what I learned from working with people with addictions is that, they talk about the spiritual malady. I've talked about the spiritual malady before. And I said, well, what's the spirituality thing? And then I give them this following description. And I kind of played with this at first, because how are you going to, explain a spiritual malady? You go into theology or whatever. But I said it's like this gnawing feeling deep down in your gut that you cannot access, stop, or control. And it goes on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no matter what you do. It may get louder or quieter, but it's always there. And so far, the people with addictions that I've mentioned that to, they go, yeah, I know what you mean. So apparently that's a relatively accurate description of what this dissatisfaction is. And people know that Buddhism and the other religions too are all about helping human beings to overcome suffering. And so the contemplative traditions talk about it in various ways. Sufism, they talk about it as a broken heart, that we are all heartsick for this connection with God. And in Hinduism, it's transcendence. Let's get out of here. In Buddhism, it's difficult because the original word is in Pali, which doesn't translate easily, but it seems to be, I've read a number of definitions, and it seems to be discontent, seems to be the essence of what it's talking about. That no matter what we do, we never get this deep feeling of contentment. And no matter how well life is going, or how much money we make, or how much in love we are, or dealing with our kids or relatives, and those really wonderful experiences, or looking at art. All that stuff is wonderful, but there's something still down there that is complaining, that is unaffected by all that. That's where those low, undulating, undefined emotions come. Those are a variety of forms, our personal variety of forms of discontent. And those take a lot of time to resolve with meditation and with self-compassion, because they're deeper, and so we have to develop our skill. How do I put it? The best process is, and it works out sort of naturally this way, that we build up our skills with the first level of meditation. We get to the point where we can handle day-to-day foibles and problems, and things we thought were good and where they don't turn out so good, and that sort of thing. We deal with how we respond to them, begin to build up our ability to pause and find this state of equanimity about things. And as we do that, we'll have other things begin to come up of the second order, and then we practice and practice and practice and work with those. And then when we gain skills there, then the really difficult and bothersome stuff will begin to come up. And that's kind of the way it is. So I find that way of looking at things helps to build a strategy. Now, it's not as easily segmented as that. Like, for instance, if somebody starts meditating and they've experienced trauma, which is a very deep, that's a third order experience, so to speak, that may be coming up, and what's recommended that if that comes up, to stop and reground, get back in your body, and work just with developing the skills of the first order of mindfulness meditation. Because that's really the foundation for dealing with all the other stuff. Because the more we look into our psyche, the more elusive and the more entrenched and the stronger these problems are. So we just build up our ability to achieve equanimity, and so that whatever comes up, we can be resilient and respond in a meaningful way. Now, the other thing is that at some point I'll talk about how wisdom arises, that this is when we, and this session is just about the mindfulness meditation, but I want to add this, is that when we, in all of these levels, so to speak, in all these levels of meditation, as we get more proficient and more used to doing it, and our brains are changing per mindfulness and compassion, compassion begins to arise. Typically when we're afraid or angry or bitter about something, and we sit and we pause and we settle into that pause, often we will get an idea or thought or a feeling about how to respond in a meaningful way. And when we do that, that's called wisdom. Because we will find that in that same or a similar situation in the future, we are automatically better equipped to respond to it, because we've already built the ability to do that in the current situation. And so that's how we make progress over time. And so, as you can see, we just have to keep doing it, and as we do, we get better and better able to address the really deeper patterns and deeper discontents that we are carrying with us. So that's the idea today. So what we're going to do is spend most of the time in the first level of meditation, meaning just settling in and working with the more obvious thoughts of deductive reasoning, the way the mind likes to jump around. And then we'll see if we can go to a little bit deeper state where there's bringing to mind something that's a little bit deeper, like a quarrel with a friend or a disappointment with someone, something. I think we'll probably stop there, because the other stuff is really the timing of when the things come up from the deeper discontent is sort of I think of it as the natural process of the psyche. In other words, when we're prepared to deal with those things, they come up. Or if they come up sooner than we're prepared, we can start over with the mindfulness meditation and go through the first two levels to help deal with that. And oftentimes that third level requires counseling or therapy or something in addition to into just meditating, a sangha, talking about it with someone else. So we'll go through the first two and see. In the narration, I'll talk about and raise questions about how to work with this particular approach or this particular level of mindfulness. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so finding a comfortable position where you don't have to move any muscles, and we'll begin. And just coming to settle in the present moment as best you can. And allowing thoughts of the day, or yesterday or tomorrow, allowing those to float away as they arise. Which helps us to settle more into just being here. And sensing the body relaxing and the emotions relaxing and the mind relaxing. And allowing the bodies to simply breathe easily. As we allow ourselves to continue to settle into the present moment. And as we do, allowing wherever there's tension, allowing it to just drain away. And whatever thoughts or emotions arise, just recognizing them and releasing them and returning to just being right here, right now. And allowing ourselves a little bit of grace from the turmoil of the world, internal or external. So that whatever arises, if it's attractive or repulsive or neutral, to just recognize it as a thought form, and let it go. And allowing ourselves to slip into silence as best we can. Allowing ourselves to just take a break from the turmoil. And bringing to mind an incident or an issue that's been on your mind, of median or middling importance, but one that brings up some emotion. Wondering what to do about a certain issue, but again mild. And allowing that to arise, if you can, in this field of equanimity. Just holding it for a moment in this stillness and seeing if you can bring it into awareness without reacting or responding to it. And without having to make any decisions, because usually we assume that when we make a decision about it, it won't bother us anymore. But that only happens if we make a wise decision. So this is about not making any decisions about it at the moment. Just being with it, just as it is, but without having to respond to it or react at all, if you can. And allowing ourselves to just hold it in our awareness as best we can. And as the thoughts and emotions engender a reaction or a response, holding that reaction and response and those emotions also in the present moment as best you can. In this way, we separate the fact of what it is, whatever the situation is, from the emotions we have about it. So this is not pushing anything away or clinging to it. This is just seeing the fact as it is, in a state where we don't really have to make a decision about it at this moment. And allowing ourselves to rest in this space as we can. And allowing the evaluator to take a rest, whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, and all that. And just be with it as it is. And allowing the feeling of this state to settle in. Knowing that it's a space into which you can bring anything. And now bringing to mind a circumstance or a person that has been problematic but not overwhelming, that seems to evoke or get in touch with some deeper feelings or emotions or thoughts about ourselves or them. So level 5, 4 or 5 maybe out of 10. And usually we'll find we have an instantaneous negative response. And that's okay. We're just observing the response and applying the skills of and the space of equanimity, bringing that situation, that emotional and mental knot, into present moment awareness. As if it's on display in a museum. And if you can, avoid getting wound up or getting caught up in the emotions, but seeing if you can just be aware of the emotions. Bringing those into this space of equanimity also. And relaxing into the realization that most things, even when we respond automatically, we don't have to respond right away. And when we do that, if there is deeper meaning to it, that will arise. And allowing ourselves this space in which, if we had felt attacked or confused or whatever it is, we can acknowledge whatever feelings arise without being overwhelmed by them. And see how we can just be with the facts, including how we feel about the situation, and just accept them as they are. And perhaps to the point where whatever has come to mind, we are in the moment, in this moment, in a state of safety. Observing. And in this state, if we can, perceive this feeling of protection. Through wisdom and acceptance. For at the moment we don't have to make any decisions about any of this at all. But it's like a good friend telling us a story of their difficulties, and we receive it with compassion, with equanimity, and loving kindness. And allowing ourselves to rest in this space of equanimity and acceptance and loving kindness. And allowing ourselves to be okay. And allowing this state to be absorbed and sink into and be absorbed by the body like a sponge absorbs water. So that when the bell rings again, you can bring this with you as you go about your day and come back to it at any time.